going to have fun with function generators from HP. The HP 3330 from 1965. The HP 3310A from 1970. And the HP 3312 from 1975, which has actually two oscillators in it. All three analog. So HP has a long history of making audio frequency oscillators, and actually the company started with that. It actually started in 1939 with the HP 200 oscillator, which got famous because Walt Disney bought one and used it in Fantasia. And by 1963 it's still around. The 200 series is still around. It has been modernized and repackaged, but still there. These are tube instruments, and by and large in 1963 they're still mostly tube instruments. But if you want not an oscillator but a function generator, meaning it can do something else than just sinusoidal waveforms, your choice would be the 202A, which is this big monster of a tube-based oscillator. But let's now go to 1965, and there are now a lot more instruments that are transistorized. In particular, they introduced a new function generator, the 3300A. Actually, it's available late 1965. This is still tentative specification, and has a plug-in. And guess what? That's what we have here, and that replaces this honking tube function generator that we saw before. So this is modernity, and it's still pretty good today. I was looking specifically for this one because I wanted to add it to my rack of 1960s equipment, and I was missing an oscillator, so I wanted a large format. And I was very interested in this plugin. We'll go into it later. But there was only one on eBay, and it came, believe it or not, guaranteed working and calibrated. It's very basic and goes from 0.01 Hertz to 100 kilohertz. I love those buttons. So this one you can push in and you can turn really fast, or you can use the little vernier here. And indeed, it's on 5 and it's 510 Hertz, so it works pretty well. Once again, it's a function generator, gives you two output for some reason. So I can have a sine, a triangle, a square, and I have the same here. I have an independent in terms of whatever function I want to generate, but an amplitude, but it's the same frequency. Actually, it occurred to me that although the 3300 frequency is right on the money, it's not quite symmetric, and the sinusoidal shape is not quite sinusoidal either. You can see it has a fat bottom and a narrow top, and then if I do the triangle, I think the square wave, the top is wider than the bottom. Well, it turns out that what I expected would be a simple readjustment revealed much deeper issues and turned into a complicated wild goose chase for wayward components. We'll skip that part right now, but lucky you'll get to see the amazing innards of this instrument during the repair adventure in a companion video. For now, let's jump to the end with our instrument returned to its former perfection. Alright, so we have our perfectly adjusted instrument. Now it looks good. Oh, the square is very square. So where were we? Ah yes, the revolutionary 3300A had just eclipsed its tube predecessor thanks to solid-state technology. But progress marches on, and 5 years later, in 1970, the 3310 is born. So another 5 years of progress ensues, and here we go, the 3310A function generator, half the size, more than 10 times the speed. It goes up to 5 megahertz, so 50 times the speed. And that one is really the one to have around the lab. It's really nice, it's really light, and it has still the big dial and immediate response of the old analog stuff. Same idea, oscillator, instant on. Now it goes over 5 decades, it goes super slow. 0.0001 hertz. So if you want to do something with a pen plotter or something like that. And on the higher end it goes up to 5 megahertz. So much larger range than the 3300. Same thing, it has triangular, sine, square wave, but on the square wave it has pulse up, pulse down, and on the triangle it has 2 sawtooths, this way and this way. So really a nice instrument to have around. And also it has 2 outputs, but it's twice the same thing. Now it's 50 ohms. The older one was a 600 ohm, which is not very practical. But now that's modern 50 ohms, and it's super powerful. I have to be careful not to overwhelm my scope with it, because it can drive 15 volts into 50 ohms. So I put it on the low, minus 30 dB output. And also it has tunable DC, so you can move it down or up. And it has the VCO input, so you can use it as a voltage tune oscillator, which, by the way, this guy also does, but it does something even better. It has this trigger phase lock module, so you can do a phase lock loop, with that one. But before we do that, this guy is completely uncalibrated. So if I put it at 2 kilohertz, what does it tell me? It's at 1.8. 1 kilohertz is 900. So we have to recalibrate it first, and then we'll use it together with this one and demonstrate the phase lock possibilities of the plugin. And off we went to perform the 21 steps adjustment procedure. Fortunately this time, besides some minor mechanical work, the instrument was working perfectly and just needed a readjustment. It's also quite beautiful and complicated inside, with many more transistors than the 3300. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see the adjustment procedure in a bonus video. Alright, after a little bit of diversion, now we have 2 oscillators that are calibrated and work as they should, which is going to allow me to explain this thing over here, which is a trigger phase lock drawer. So here we go. That's normal mode, and you can use it in gated. Here actually it's in gated manual. Turn it on or off, and you can use it in a gated single. Oops, it just does 1 pulse. But of course it's a lot more fun to do that with an other input. So I'll do this, and I'll get that one on, and we'll put it in pulse mode like this. Long pulse. Alright, and what it's going to do, of course, it is going to gate this guy. It should, if I put it to external. There we go. So of course I have signals only during the gate, right? Which allows you to make a burst. And note that it only puts an even number of cycles. So if I put this one super slow, it will continue until it finishes its cycle. Also, you can control the phase. at which it starts and finishes. And of course, if you put it in single, you can have just one single cycle of everything, which is particularly helpful if you want to, you're in triangular and you want to get to a sweep of something. And there you go, you can trigger a sweep with the other one, and it's only going to trigger you one at a time. So that's the normal gating function. I really like this. You can have, when it's in sine, you can just have whoop, one hump of whatever you want. But this one has a really unusual function. It says phase lock on it. So let's get these into sines and back to free running. Kilohertz, and we'll put this one now at 2 kilohertz and try to phase lock it. There you go. They've just been phase locked. You can see that the one on the top is driving the one on the bottom. You can choose the angle of the phase lock from 0, where they are all aligned. Here you can see 0 to 180. And you can do it over 360 if you want. You don't have to have anything sinusoidal, right? It will phase lock on the pulse, on the triangular, on anything. Yes. And we just phase lock on the harmonic, so you have to help it a little bit. Yeah, so that's what harmonic is that. I don't know, it's 2/3 or something. So it's a funny animal. And when you get it to low audio frequency, it's really slow. And let's see, 200. There you go, phase locked, and you can choose to go wherever you want. So I'm not sure why they put this, because there is no real way to exploit it. It's missing a demodulation output, right? I would like to have the frequency modulation or the phase modulation output. So I could, for example, demodulate the signal from the Apollo encoded stuff. But you can't, it just phase locks the signal and that's it. So it's really unique of this instrument. It wasn't used very much afterwards, but it really demonstrates how phase lock works, right? It's going to catch it. And lock it. Maybe I could modify it actually to have the phase error and be able to do some demodulation, but I thought it was just fun on its own. Another way to do it, this one has the VCO input. This one does have it as a too, but at the back is inconvenient. So let's reverse the roles here. Let's listen to this one. And let's have this one control the other one. So I'm going to put it to the VCO input. I'm going to turn that one really slow. Okay, we're wobbling. So now the frequency of this is controlled by that, so you can make it do okay, well, a two-tone thing. Alright, we have a FSK, frequency shift keying, like used for radio teletype. And that's how sirens sounds from where I come from. And then if you're in the US, they are much better. They have the sine wave version of this. Okay. I've been caught by a cop, and then they do that from time to time, which is just wobbling the frequency 10 times faster. Okay, so that's the traditional VCO thing, but things get interesting when you try to do it at similar frequency . And then you are getting to a regime where you are doing FM sound synthesis, like the DX7 was doing. The DX7 was an early digital synthesizer from the 1980s that defined much of the sound of the electronic music of that era. Ken Sheriff recently reversed engineered the DX7 chip, revealing for the first time its inner details. Instead of just 2, it uses 6 digital oscillators per note that can frequency modulate each other, generating very complex sounds. Oh, that is typically a DX7 tone, right, with the ringing overtone. I can hear it if you've ever been familiar with that instrument. And when you're gifted, you can actually make music with that, but I'm not gifted enough. Fortunately, there are such gifted people like Hainbach on YouTube. He can make live music with whatever piece of vintage test instrument he can get his hands on. You'll recognize our little oscillator in this extract from his video, How I Make Music with Test Instruments. That's all pretty much for these 2 oscillators, but let me bring one more. So I was reading about the history of these oscillators, and they mentioned that this one is actually the ultimate evolution of this series, is this 3312. And I didn't think much of this instrument. Actually, that's one it's one I got for free. It's in my mind what I consider the low-end instrument. And I read all it could do and said, my goodness, mine doesn't do that. Mine hardly works. It's completely off frequency. And it turns out that it was actually broken. I didn't know. So I repaired it off camera. But basically, what this is a combination of those two in one box. So if you now look at the 1975 catalog, here's our brand new 3312 generator. But if you flip to the next page, you can still buy the 3310. And if you flip to the previous page, you can still buy the 3300, which has now a new plug-in, which is the sweep oscillator. And if you flip back further, sure enough, you can still buy the Series 200 tube instruments in 1975. So the stuff that dates back from 1939 is still there in 1975. And I have to admit, now that it's repaired, it's a pretty interesting instrument. I lament that it has only a small dial. It has lost the big easy dial, but apart from that, it's a much more powerful. It goes to 50 megahertz now. Or 50 or, sorry, 10 megahertz, 10 megahertz. And what you expect, right, the three waveform. It has one more button here. You can change the symmetry. So that's pretty cool. And its big claim to fame is to have a second function generator here, where you can do AM, FM, and sweep. Let's try AM. Do AM modulation. You can do FM modulation. You can do both at the same time. And you can sweep FM, sweep, no, that doesn't work together. You cannot do AM. So it's basically a little extra modulator that you have, and you can also gate it. There we go. Let's go back to, there you go, and you have the phase. Oh, you have the phase somewhere. There you go. So that's pretty much the same gating capability as you had in this module, and I thought you could do a single. Oh, it's at the back. Okay, so you can also do the single pulse stuff that we used to do with that one, but you have to switch it at the back. And so you can do all kind of cool things with it. And interesting things happen when you start to modulate it at the same frequency as the carrier. You can also have external modulation. This guy. So now I have this oscillator controlling the VCO of that one, that controls the amplitude modulation of that one. So you can play to your heart's content. It's really fun to have audio oscillators that are analog and have actual buttons, and you can switch stuff around and get immediate results. Anyhow, that's it for the lineup of old analog HP oscillators, and they are all great. I don't know which one I would recommend. That's probably my little favorite here. Alright, see you next time. And add one more to this. The series is still with us today. Here is the latest of the series 33 oscillators. Is the 33212 from Keysight. And I have to thank Keysight a lot here. I'm being treated by them. I have a whole bunch of instruments that are going to be shipped to me for the Apollo communication setup, and I'm going to be brought to the 21st century. But basically, this is the evolution of this lineage. Of course, this thing trounces any of these. It's much faster, it's precise to the last decimal. But it still has the basic functionality that was that started with this, right? It will have the sweep, the burst, the modulation. In my mind, it's lost a little bit of the directness of these, right? So I like these ancient instruments where you have big dials and you have one button for everything. But of course, this one has one capability that none of these have. It's digital, so it's an arbitrary waveform generator. So I hope I can program it and generate some of the encoded signals for the digital Apollo setup. So on this, thanks Keysight, and see you in the next episode.